Hello and welcome to episode 20. My name is Ross
I'm Craig.
and it's time to put the kettle on because it's tea time. I think we've had a bit of a slow news week this week.
We have.
And I don't know about you, but mostly depressing. Do you have any positive ones to share with us at some point?
I do, yeah. I have one positive, one not so positive for yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll get started then, shall I?
Please do.
Okie dokie. Right. First one. Positive. The price of electric bikes could be cut by up to a third under the new government plans to offer commuters a sweat-free alternative to conventional bicycles.
Okay.
Supposedly, the offer will be a direct subsidy like they did for plug-in cars, and the scheme is due to launch in the UK by April 2021. Which I basically think means if you go to an electric bike shop, you just get a instant discount off it. They're trying to encourage people that wear suits and older people who perhaps don't want to ride on a bike because they're worried about looking like a hot pig. That's a new thing because apparently everyone else, all other electric vehicles have subsidies, but bikes don't. So they're trying to rectify that situation. And of course, some people are worried that just means that those who have lots of money are going to get subsidized to have things that, they would otherwise not get. Because, if you want to encourage it, do you need to give it to one that's got a £3,000 bike, or is it better just to give it the ones that are under 1,000 for the people that couldn't afford the bike unless that, you know what I mean?
Yes. There was actually a bit of news I read related to this. I can't remember which country it was. It was an Eastern European country which done a scheme, might have been Estonia, where they were doing trade-ins. So you trade your petrol car or your diesel car in, and you get an electric bike. Yes. And it apparently worked pretty well.
I suppose if it's a really naff car and it's quite a decent electric bike, that might work. You generally think that would be a bad deal, wouldn't you? So I give you a car, you give me a bike. No.
I mean, I have actually done that deal before. When I first went to uni, I no longer needed a car, so I actually did trade it for a bike.
Okay.
Just a push bike.
Well, that proves it works then. Fair enough. Okay. This is when that was the only positive one I had. Like I said, and the rest of it gets a little bit worse. In the typical screw-up move, the increase in energy from waste incineration, which was originally promoted by the previous Conservative government, is allowing the moronic to make matters worse. So, energy from waste, which is obviously just burning stuff that you can't otherwise recycle, is supposed to be a last resort, but because it gets labelled as waste that has been processed, it makes it look like people are doing things responsibly, but if you haven't got the other recycling that you're doing first, then all you're really doing is taking all the rubbish that people are trying to recycle in best endeavors, and then just burning it, and then obviously releasing even more carbon dioxide and other emissions and other crap into the atmosphere, and no one else knows about it. And it tends to happen more in places that aren't doing recycling, perhaps have less diverse neighborhoods and things like that. So basically, it's just making the matters worse.
Yes, I thought we got past the whole burning it because we realized that burying it was mildly better. So bad, but mildly better.
What? But isn't burying the same as landfill?
Yes, basically. As in, don't burn it into the atmosphere, just bury it.
Well, I think what they worked out is that if they did burn it, then they could at least get some of the energy back from it.
Right. Okay.
So that would be, if you like, a good thing. If it means that you're getting energy from stuff that you're burning, you can't do anything else with, it means it's not filling up landfill and you're not using coal instead to heat your homes, you're using that thing. However, if you don't recycle the plastic or the metal or the wood or anything else, first, then all you're doing is just burning your landfill and filling the world with disgusting stuff.
Yeah.
Hence, I refer to them as moronic. Anyway, so that's happening. But there's worse, and we need to come up with a proper name for this. But the round of, which is actually the reverse, the round of applause, round of abuse version is going to this week. I'm going to give it to the EU again. So Oatly, who know who Oatly are? They make the they applied for a trademark slogan, and the phrase that they wanted to use was, "It's like milk but made for humans."
Okay.
Which I thought was quite good, because as we discussed on this our own channel not that long ago, about how the sort of we forget about milk and where it comes from and all that sort of stuff, and the fact that maybe we shouldn't be drinking another cow's milk. But anyway, so the EU, in their wisdom, have basically refused it. Now, if you remember, I think it might have even only been last week, we reported about how they'd been arguing over whether to call burgers, whether to call them, I think discs was the suggestion.
Sliders, right? Discs, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And the reason for that being is that they were worried that if you call it a burger, it would confuse people into thinking it had meat in it, which we understand, albeit a bit playing to the morons. But they decided that this particular slogan, to remind you, it's like milk but for humans, was not appropriate because, now what did it say? That it was because people know that cow's milk is for calves. So they didn't like it because people already know. They didn't like the burgers because that would confuse people. But pointing out something that they supposedly already know would also confuse them. I know I'm confused. I don't get it. There seems to be some sort of thing going on at the moment about basically anti-veganism. Is just what it seems to be. I can't figure out what the heck EU are doing.
I can't really see what. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't get it either. So yeah, we've got issues as to whether we can call things. And now we're not allowed to tell people that they're not drinking. I think the real reason surely is that they're worried that it's going to damage the, actually be very impactful, because it will make people question, well, why am I drinking milk that's meant for a baby cow? Why am I drinking that?
Well, they already know.
Yeah. So I think that my only version of it is that they're worried it's going to actually be too good.
But they're going to start blacklisting like milk sellers. I mean, I think in general, but most of us do know cow's milk is for calves. I think we're aware of that. I think we've also discussed previously that it's a very westernized, European westernized thing to even consume milk. Most of the world are lactose intolerant, so we are very niche in a sense by doing this. But yeah, I can't see how you can reject a slogan because it's true, which is silly.
Exactly. I mean, it's not like Twitter's been going after Donald Trump because his comments are too true, is it?
No. Surely, what's that? What's the butter? Utterly butterly. Don't they? Isn't their slogan like it's like butter but better, or better for you, or something like that? They got a really obvious thing that we're not butter, or some sort.
I don't know. It just seems odd. It just seems very, 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 very well dumb. Basically, I think people think you're right. Most people do know it's for cows, but I also think it's something that we've forgotten to think about. That actually, when you say to someone, you do realise you're drinking something that was meant for a baby cow, they go, "Oh yeah, I am, aren't I?" That's a good point. Why do we do that? Anyway, so that's my round of abuse. EU, stop it. And unfortunately, I don't know whether I was just too angry after that to carry on, but I didn't find anything else that was of any use. Oh, actually, no.
Yeah.
There is something. There is something. It's not a full news item, but I have. There's a guy called. There's a YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it. Just have a think. And they had an episode last week, which I watched, which I thought was particularly interesting, and it was about the situation with methane, frozen methane.
Okay.
So we've now got to the point where the permafrost that surrounds the Arctic Circle is obviously it melts every summer and then it comes back every winter, but it's melting to a point where it's longer, to the point where they're sending out boats and they are literally observing bubbles of gas coming up through the ocean, and it's methane basically being released. No one quite knows what the impact of that's going to be, but it's the sort of thing that could be one of those beautiful tipping point moments where it's been frozen under the ground for so long, and then if you actually let it go, it'll just all of it comes up, and then you're screwed.
Yeah, I think it was one that.
A bit like when your was it the buried time capsule, is released. That's basically what happens, except this is bad for the world. So, so that's happening as well.
Yeah, I wonder if all the methane ends up in Ireland too. But yeah, apparently the melting of the permafrost is a tipping point, and that's what Christina Figueres and the Paris Climate Agreement are talking about. As once that tips, there's only 3 ecosystems in the world that kind of prevent us from becoming Venus today. Permafrost being one of them. If that tips, then that pushes the other ecosystems, the stressing point basically, and it's almost be like a domino effect.
Yeah. So, do you have anything slightly more positive than I have?
Yes, I do. Well, one thing.
One, great.
Yeah, so exactly same as you. Not a lot of news this time around, but I have got a little something on Scotland.
Scotland.
Yes, specifically Scotland to England renewable energy superhighway. So really cool project that's been agreed by Scottish Power, National Grid, and the SSE, or SSE rather. These are 3 of Britain's biggest energy companies.
Yeah.
So it's great to see them agree on something. And they are looking to build a giant underwater power cable to bring Scotland's vast renewable energy to roughly 4.5 million English homes.
Is that because they've already supplied it to the whole of Scotland already, and now they've got extra?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
When Scotland have extra, they have a lot of extra. I'll get the actual details in a second, but this kind of coincides with government's plans to massively increase offshore wind, as we know about. Yeah. That's looking to ramp up and be complete by roughly 2030, I believe. Right now, the project that's been proposed will transport 2 gigawatts, but has capacity to double to 4 gigawatts. Mm-hmm. However, once those offshore wind platforms are in place, Scotland is roughly capable of producing 10 gigawatts by itself. This will be generated in Scottish waters, so it's Scottish, so hopefully they don't become independent. And in the coming years, we are going to need a bigger cable. Otherwise, Scotland keeps that.
Right.
So,
just to interject that, I did also read that there's some huge effort in the EU. Maybe I shouldn't diss them quite so much, to add tidal, which I think, I don't know why I don't hear more about tidal, but apparently there's some new plans to make a huge growth in tidal now. I mean, sadly, I'm seeing what looks like turbines underwater, which is concerning for me, but I'm sure they could come up better way. But the other thing that's, again, I know I've said it a few times, but like green hydrogen, or whatever the hell it's called, it was announced that it's Saudi Arabia is now switching to hydrogen. Now, for me, I've had a slight concern about hydrogen for a while now, because it seems to keep getting picked up by the kind of companies that were doing oil before.
Yeah,
which is
why?
fine because they have the capability to do it. But you just know that those people aren't the people that care. And that bothers me slightly, that they're the ones going into hydrogen. And it's also that the UK seems to be going heavily into both wind and hydrogen.
Hydrogen makes sense because I assume it's very cheap because it's so abundant. So I assume the oil companies are getting into it because it's cheap.
Yeah, but I'm also worried they're going to find ways of needing to use oil to do it. Do you know
Well,
what
I
I
mean,
mean?
Saudi Arabia has so much oil. I
Well,
can't even believe they're even considering hydrogen. It's kind of like what they say into the outside world. Oh, yeah, we could use hydrogen. Just chuck another barrel on the fire.
worries me, Craig. Anyway, sorry. Carry on.
Yep. Nice interjection. Hydrogen. Yeah, there's an entirely different topic there we need to discuss.
You do.
But other than that, offshore wind, Scotland will be absolutely loaded by 2030. And England needs probably a much better relationship because that's not going too well right now. I mean, if they just build that cable a bit longer, just skip England, come straight to Wales, I think we'd be happy.
But that was why I brought up. So tidal is I think there probably should be some more efforts done to make, like, I don't know, the River Severn's a good example or not, but I imagine it probably is a good opportunity to get quite a bit of tidal in the south west of the country.
Yeah.
And even down the channel, even, I'm not sure, but or the North Sea. But I do feel like there's, we're in Ireland, we should use what we've got, right?
Yeah. I mean, wind seems to be the per actual square footage, that seems to be the highest.
Yes, but the advantage of tidal over wind is that obviously it's a bit more reliable.
Does it kill fish as opposed to killing birds?
Well, if we use the ones that have these massive turbines underwater that spin around, I would imagine it's probably sushi wet dream, to use your phrase. So I'm sure that's what I mean. I'm sure they can come up with a better version that doesn't require blade spinning. But anyway, but the fact that we are in Ireland, the fact that we have lots of it, and the fact that it's more regular and more consistent than wind makes me feel like we should use it a lot more.
If that permafrost is melting, we're going to get a lot more water before we get a lot more wind. So maybe. Anyway, in other news, so Rishi Sunak is looking for a way to tax the EV market. Now, have you seen this? Because this directly impacts you.
I heard a rumor, but I don't know anything about it really.
Okay, so the idea right now is potentially pay per mile. So an actual way to charge cars for using roads. So the road tax system will be abolished. Obviously, that was we knew it was going to happen anyway at some point.
Yeah.
But this kind of follows the announcement of the scrapping of selling new petrol and diesel cars. So that's also been pulled forward. So you can no longer buy a new petrol or diesel car after 2030 in the UK.
Cool.
But when that happens, we're expecting a roughly 40 billion black hole in the public finances of how to pay for the road networks, etc. Maintain. Yeah. So yeah, how does this affect you? Because you're an electric car user.
Obviously, it would cost me, but I think it's in the long term, it's the right thing to do. Obviously, I should be paying to use the roads. I don't do an awful lot of driving anyway, and I think if it was worse, if they can figure out a pay per mile system, I know they do that, other than, I guess, recording your mileage at the beginning and the end of each year. But I think that would be a lot fairer because if you, first of all, if you drive around a lot, then you are making more use of the roads, and therefore it makes sense that you should pay more. But also, there's other like little subtle benefits, like if you decide not to live in the city centre and you live outside of the area so that you can have cheaper housing or whatever, then you drive in, and that's all, and you've given yourself the inconvenience of that. But also, there is a if you're producing emissions or whatever for doing that, or using the roads from doing that, and actually then there should probably be some sort of penalties, probably the wrong word, but something to weigh that up slightly better, so those that decide to live in the city and walk benefit from the fact that they've chosen to live nearby. So yeah, overall, I think absolutely the right thing to do. We should all be paying towards the roads.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do it. There isn't any concrete methods stated in how we're going to do this. Like motorways, for example, have camera systems the entire way through. Maybe that's used to literally calculate how long you've used that road. Maybe introduce motorways first by itself. That might be the easiest to do.
I mean, why can't you just record your mileage? Why not? I mean, isn't that be easier?
Maybe you do. Maybe every time you do have an MOT, which does record your mileage for the DVLA, they'd say, cool, you've done 12,000 miles this year. So your tax this year is 120 quid, whatever.
Yeah. And they only have to deal with the first year problem, don't they? But they could do the road tax as they normally do, and then that for the first year, and then the second year you were paying for your usage of the road the year before.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's a flat fee for everyone who starts in the first year of driving or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they need to make it fair somehow, because obviously not every road is equal. Private country lane, well, not private lanes, obviously, because they belong to someone else. Public country lanes, which don't get cleaned of snow and all that type of stuff. Yeah. I imagine people would kick off if they typically just drive those, and they don't get the same maintenance level that a motorway does. So every mile is not equal. So I'm not sure how they can do that. Or how that works.
That affects me. I drive on city roads most of the time, mostly because I have enough battery length to go on the main roads. Or I might use those more if I could actually get there and back. But then you've also got like businesses who are right now they're paying fuel and they're driving, round. Obviously, when their fuel costs disappear, they're going to benefit hugely from that. So it would make sense to take some of that back off them to pay for the roads.
Yeah.
I'm down with it, even though it costs me money, because that's the kind of guy I am.
Yeah. I mean, also, we're also going to stop using the fuel subsidies that we currently do, because obviously we artificially keep petrol to be cheaper than it actually is. And apparently that's cost 110 billion over the last 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
Of just subsidizing petrol. So we stopped doing that. I mean, that's going to help the budget in some way.
Yeah, let's do that. Why have we been doing that all this time?
I don't know. How much is petrol these days? How much will it become afterwards?
I don't know, Greg. I haven't bought petrol in a long time.
Well, don't you just drive past them and give the middle finger to the petrol station forecourts?
Yeah, just walk past, go. Excuse me.
Yeah. Basically, we have no idea how we're going to do this. There doesn't seem to be an example of this anywhere else in the world, but obviously this will become a worldwide issue at some point when we're all electric car users by 2030, maybe. So that's something we need to work on. But it's cool to see Rishi Sunak thinking about this. He does seem to be a very interesting, future-looking guy.
Yeah.
I like him.
Yes, so do I. Open-minded. We like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely next PM potential. He's got it all over. But that's all I have. I have 2 pieces of news.
And he can construct a sentence without sounding like he's drunk. Right. Okay, cool. So let's get on to today's main thing, shall we?
What is today?
Craig, today I am posing a different question. Should we all live in a dome?
Okay.
That's my question. Should we all be living in domes, or should the world have more domes? So, what is a dome? You know what it's a dome is. In case for those who are completely unfamiliar with the concept, it is a half sphere or a hemisphere, as you may otherwise know in a bit. It is that is what it is. It's basically a structure which looks like a circle half stuck in the ground. Most of the famous domes associated with buildings around the world are actually just domes stuck on the top of other buildings. So stuff like the Taj Mahal, or if you have never left the country or Googled anything in your life, then maybe you've seen St. Paul's Cathedral or something like that. But I wanted to talk about domes as the core structure of the building, not as a thing on the top, not as a visual piece. So domes like the Eden project, for example, in Cornwall, that dome is a geodesic dome. It's made of steel tubes arranged in hexagonal and pentagonal shapes, covered with, and I have to check my notes here, ethyl tetrafluoroethylene foil, which in English is like a transparent pillow. Basically like a plastic that you can fill up with air and becomes a little pillow.
Nice.
So all the little
stuff we got from Roswell,
all the little dome, all the little hexagons are just filled with this stuff, with this air and this plasticky stuff. Like, it's just like expensive cling film, I guess. Anyway, so the Eden's project dome structure is relatively complicated, but if you look into the basics of what constitute a geodesic dome, they are usually categorized by their frequency. The frequency of a dome is the number of different lengths of struts used to make the entire structure. So I've got an image here to help with my illustration, so I shall quickly share that with you now. Okay, yes, so I'll try and explain this as well for the podcasters. We've got a picture here of the different frequency examples. So the one frequency dome is literally made of the same length of piece of wood, and then you basically put it in a different formation to make sort of triangular shapes in order to try and make a structure building of that piece. It tends to look quite blocky, quite triangular, and it's very pointy. Whereas if you take that length of wood and then you take the half point in the middle and sort of bend it up like that, I'm not doing a good job because my hand is a different length than my arm. And while I'm illustrating it, they're on a podcast. They're going, so if you take your two hands together and then you lift up the hand in the middle, that basically makes an extra frequency. So it's like taking a halfway point and then pulling it up with a string, and then so a box then becomes a slightly more dome shape. So the more times you do that, the shorter each individual line becomes, the more spherical the whole structure becomes. So YouTubers, you can just look at that picture and hopefully that all makes sense. And if you look at a geodesic dome as a skeleton and you look closely, you start to see all the tiny little hexagons and the tiny diamonds and the pentagons, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what a geodesic dome looks like. So let's stop sharing. So the higher the frequency, the more complex the design becomes, but the more spherical the dome appears, which is mildly academically interesting, perhaps, but there's more. There's more. Domes are amazing. Just bear with me. So first of all, they're actually the strongest human shelter ever conceived. Typically, we live in a box or a box shape, and we have to worry about load-bearing walls and roofs. But a dome evenly distributes any stress along the entire body of the structure, basically holding itself up. So you take a piece out or several pieces out, and it can become quite weak. But as long as every piece is there, it all leans on itself, and it's sort of self-sustaining, self-lifting, supporting. That's a good word. Thank you. So you can make a small one with just PVC pipe and some connectors, all held together with zip ties. And because of the weight distribution, you can stand on it, you can hang off it. It doesn't look like something that should hold your weight, but it does because of the way it's structured. And because of this distribution of stress, it's also extremely good in earthquakes. As it's spherical, it's also very aerodynamic, which makes it particularly useful in windy places. So it can actually withstand a hurricane if it needs to. Domes are also efficient in terms of their volume to surface area. So usually about 30% less than a box-shaped building, which makes them more efficient to heat. It provides more living space per surface area, and less surface area means less materials and therefore cheaper to make. So they also circulate air better. The lack of corners that you'd get in a normal box structure makes the ambient airflow continuous. So it requires even less energy to circulate the air and maintain a even temperature throughout. In a box shape, you'd have to pump the thing harder to get that stagnant air that gets trapped in the corners and push it out. So it's just inefficient in that sense. Also, the larger the dome, the more efficient it becomes. So if you double the diameter of a dome, it increases its volume by 8 times. So both the Eden Project and the Millennium Dome were record breakers in terms of the size when they were built. Because it just scales up. Whereas in other structures, the bigger it gets, then you need to have more supports and more other things to keep it going. Domes can just scale and scale and scale and scale, and they just get bigger and bigger, and it all works. You might increase the frequency if you go to, and you probably can't have you can't have a 2-frequency dome, which is massive. So you would need to have at least a 5-frequency dome, the bigger it got. But in terms of the actual design, if you like, it doesn't change. You just need to add another frequency. Okay, so spheres are also efficient in every way. It's why nature often chooses it. So if you think of a dandelion puffball thingy that you can blow seeds away, that's spherical shape. Beading on a leaf, or on your very well waxed car, if you have such a thing. Even the shape of the planets, and of course the sun. All of those are spheres. And speaking of the sun, it's becoming more normal these days that homes are fitted with solar panels. Well, what shape just so happens to gain the maximum amount of solar, no matter what the time of year is? Oh, it's a dome.
I never would have guessed.
Even when it's low in the sky, you've got the bottom section of the dome. If it's high in the sky, you've got the top section of the dome. Whereas you don't, if it's in winter, our normal roofs suffer because the panels are on the top of the roof, and you have the sun has to be at a certain height just to even hit the damn thing. So they're not as efficient. So, in summary, they are stronger. They are cheaper to make. They're more energy efficient, and they are better for solar. So my question is, why are we not making more domes? Why do we keep making boxes all the time?
I don't know. I mean, domes are pleasing to look at too. So aesthetically pleasing. I would love to live in a dome. I can't think why we chose boxes. Do you have a reason? It's a historical thing?
Well, I was looking for reasons, and weirdly, one that just kept coming up, and admittedly, it's just a Google search, so it's just people giving their opinion. But one of the most common answers I kept finding was that furniture is normally designed for straight walls. So you think your bed, your sofa, your chest of drawers, whatever, they're all designed to fit up against a flat wall, and that was the main reason that they thought that domes weren't more successful. But for me, that's like having the cart lead the horse. If you had domes, if you had circular things, and they came in some sort of normal, diameter, then you probably would find that you'd also have furniture that was roundish.
Yeah, but you could also have, walls inside a dome if you wanted to. It hasn't got to be open plan.
Yeah. And who says you need to put the furniture against the wall anyway? Just have a slightly different, design, really.
Oh, yeah. Actually, we have discussed this before, the benefits of boxes over domes, and that's stackability. I'm not sure if you come to this later.
I haven't got it on there later. No, but that is a good point. Yes, high-rise buildings, or whatever you want to call them, yes, stacking things on top of each other, domes don't do particularly well at that. That is true. But for individual ownership, house, whatever, your own personal house that is on your own land, that sort of style, then it's the most efficient structure you could use. So I thought I would do a bit more visual again. Apologies for the podcasters for Craig's benefit, and he can comment on them and tell you what you think. A few designs that I've come across, which sort of try to eliminate some of the concerns that one might have from a dome structure. So, Craig, what do you think of this one, first of all? So here we've got a tall dome with, they've obviously tried to make it, because what you typically expect is if in a dome, how do you have anything more than one floor? How's that going to work? So this design has got like a mezzanine floor covering the back half of the dome with a sort of rounded staircase going up to it. Presumably that's where the bedrooms are. And then downstairs, you've got this sort of, again, circular type kitchen and lounge. Windows, look at that, going all the way up to the roof in a sort of straight line using the shape of the panels of the dome.
Yeah. I actually quite love that. It's really good.
I'd live in a house like that, wouldn't you?
Completely. It looks extremely pricey, but I definitely would like to live somewhere like that.
Yeah, fair enough. Right. Next one is, again, this is a cut half of a dome where, again, we've got the same sort of idea with having a 2-floor thing, proving that you can, as long as the dome is. So this is like a 3/4 dome, in the sense that it's only a third of the sphere that's hidden or cut off. So it rises higher out of the ground and then has it sort of comes out before it goes back in. But again, looks like we've got this sort of central, which is probably the functional element of having the pipes and stuff running through down the center of the dome, and then having the rooms off from that center. But again, you've got a kitchen, you've got separate rooms. I think it's a perfectly good design.
Oh, very much. The center part makes sense. Kind of like a Terrace chocolate orange.
Yes. So yeah, in my head, that I'm imagining putting my, all your electric wires down the center, and then, or gas pipes or whatever else you need, all down the center where it's as insulated or whatever as necessary, and then come off from there, because that way you've always got a central point. And you don't, because I don't know if you've ever watched anyone cabling a house, but you end up with an awful lot of, it's wrapped around here. It's going up from the first floor to the second floor. It's going across, then it's going back down again. It's all it can get quite higgledy-piggledy. Whereas I imagine this structure, you've got you're tapping into everything from the middle of every room, essentially. Not the edge of each room is all pointing to this central pillar that goes down the middle of the house, which I think would make for a more general and efficient design anyway.
Yes.
This is another one, just like a cut off, showing the sort of the wall structures that you can have, still allowing at least 2 or 3 walls to be straight, but they do have a lot of curved things. But I think curves are nice. I think they flow nicely.
I think they're very aesthetically pleasing.
I don't know how they've done that bed. Look, it's got a slight curve on the edge of the bed.
Yeah, like a curved mattress. Yeah, I think they have.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you can buy a ever so slightly curved mattress.
No. Well, I'm sure there must be, a dome supplier somewhere that's making them, but yeah. So that's a very cool looking place. Now, I particularly like this one here, this green one, because it demonstrates for me that it can exist within the structure of the land. So you can see a typical hill structure, if you can imagine a mound of greenery, but actually built within that mound is a dome, so that you have it perhaps that the mass of land is on the north side of your house, which insulates your house, keeps it warm, and then all the windows would point south, allowing for lots of sun to come in. But from the north side or the east or west side, you probably wouldn't even be able to see the house in terms of the front door, so you wouldn't even know it was there.
Yeah, very much like a Teletubby house.
Yes, the Teletubbies. Let's all live like them. So anyway, I want to take this one stage further in this sort of green, organic style housing is this looking at this picture, which is basically a tree.
A massive tree, but yeah.
A massive tree. But notice the shape of it, Craig. And then here's another one. Look, another tree just sat out in the world. It just looks like a big ball on a pedestal. Because that's what trees are, Craig. They're just domes on a pedestal. That's all they are. Admittedly, they don't always come in a circular shape. Sometimes they're a bit wiggly-piggly, but essentially that's what they are. So if you take that idea to the next level, you end up with houses that look like this one.
Ooh, tree houses.
So these are tree houses. These aren't made to live in, but they're just looked at like viewing points or places to hang out with a pint or something. But you get where I'm going with this. The idea that you can build a dome, especially that second one, it's probably a bit more obvious. You can build a dome that's literally wrapped around the trunk of the tree and uses the shape of the tree as it supports internally to hold the thing up, basically. And depending on the tree breed, is that right? Of the tree itself, some trees will have a long thin trunk which goes up quite far before the branches come up, and other ones have quite an interesting design where they will come off the ground and then immediately branch out.
Okay.
Now those trees are kind of interesting in themselves because they create what's basically like a nest. Which, if you think about how birds make their nest, they take a couple of branches that are basically like that, and they often just put a nest in the middle of it. Well, it would be the same idea. So you'd have the tree trunks growing out from the side, and in the middle, you'd have your dome, which could be a house, and you use the fact that the tree is slightly off the floor to prevent some of the issues of having, wood or whatever on the floor and it rotting and that sort of stuff. So, so a thought experiment for you, Craig. What if we took the design of the mound and of the tree, and instead of having like a residential street like the one that you live on, which is basically a sort of crawling road thingies surrounded by houses, what if you just got rid of all the houses and replaced them with a combination of mounds and trees, so that it basically looked like a massive park, depending on what angle you looked at it from. But in amongst that park, you would have actual houses. What would that look like? Would that work?
I mean, it feels nice. Yeah, I can imagine that. That kind of solves maybe the stackability a bit too, because you could have domes above a dome on a tree. So you could have multiple things there, perhaps.
Yeah. Have the bottom set of branches, and then if there's a tree that has another top set up there, you could have. That's an interesting idea. I hadn't even thought that one. I mean, I imagine you need a decent staircase, but you could make one off the side of a tree. But it does benefit then from the shelter that trees give you, in terms of weather and stuff. So I thought I was trying to think of the pros and cons. Obviously, if you're surrounded by green, that's got to be better for your own personal health, but it's also better for the planet in terms of we're trying to plant a lot of trees at the moment. Better for flooding, which is going to be more important as the more we melt the ice, because obviously concrete roads and stuff, tarmac roads, can't let the water go through it. So they're just runoffs. They run off and then have to be absorbed then by the soil, either side of it. Whereas obviously if it was all grass, then there'd be a lot more absorption that can take place. Obviously more aesthetically pleasing. But then so I guess the bigger question really is not the benefits, because they're obvious, but what are the negatives? What would be the negatives of living in that sort of environment? All I could really think of was the upkeep, because you'd presumably have to, mow your house, not just your garden, quite regularly. to keep it in check. It would get muddy because it's more grassy than it is. That's the benefit of living on a tarmac street with concrete pavements or whatever, is they don't tend to get weeds growing out of them, and they don't get too muddy and stuff, and animals don't move in. But then presumably that's the fact that we got used to that, and we don't like our creatures around us is probably not a good thing anyway. It's probably just something that we need to learn to adjust back to.
Yeah. I mean, we are very close to animals. I would say most people have a pet. It seems to be a natural thing to have.
Yeah, but these pets aren't going to say pets that you want, are they?
No, but I'm sure they could be quite useful. Like, what do squirrels do? Squirrels could probably be quite useful.
Useful?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you train squirrels to be useful?
I don't know. I've never tried. I thought about training crows once, but I never got around to it.
Yeah, incredibly intelligent crows.
That's why I was going to train them.
They could probably deliver messages from house to house. Oh, go tell Dave.
I did say it was a thought experiment. This is not the direction I was expecting you to go in, to be honest.
No, I'm thinking of it. I can see it. I do like it. I think the only difficulties I can see with creating this, the maintenance would be an issue. It kind of feels like the up cost would be a lot more too. Obviously, chucking up a square and then putting a square on top of it, then a roof. These are just factory copy and pastes. Whereas domes, they don't feel so copy and paste. They kind of feel more, they have to fit the environment that exists. So they're a lot more thought out, a lot more meticulous, which will result in a higher quality, better thing. But for that reason, they could be quite expensive per square meter.
Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, as I already mentioned, the surface area is actually less than a square building. So, in terms of first principles, how much material do I need? It's actually less. Also, there's at least one design where you make an individual triangle and you replicate that triangle like 60 something times, and that's enough to make the full structure, the full wooden structure of the building. So for me, that's like, there's some economies of scales to be had there, because you can for every size house, if you decide that yours is going to be a 10-meter house, and you might have a 15-meter house, if there's some sort of consistency amongst that, then for every single 10-meter diameter house, it's the same triangle. You produce 60 of them for that person. And if one breaks, you've got, another one. So it should, if it became mass market, should become much cheaper than it would be to produce as we do now.
Yeah, good point.
Obviously, the internal parts may be slightly different because that would be unique to each individual person, but the outer part of the building should be pretty cheap to make, one would assume. Less material, and you can use the same material throughout, whereas I don't think you can do that with wooden structures. You need different lengths for different parts of the building, and you need to actually think that through, whereas you could literally turn up with a set of 65, whatever it is, triangles, and then go, right, done. Structure built. So, yeah, I think in the long run, if it became massively produced, then it should be cheaper. But fair enough. Maybe living in one of these is a step too far. So I've backed it up a little bit. And in the UK, it was quite commonplace to have a greenhouse in your garden. But obviously, we don't do that as much these days. And greenhouses most time I've ever seen a greenhouse, it's usually someone smashed up one in someone's garden for some old person who couldn't bother to look after it. But I'm sure they are still being used all over the place. But so I wanted to recap some of the benefits, but then apply it specifically to greenhouses or glass houses, as they used to be called. So one, domes are very resistant to high-speed winds. So you quite often find greenhouses and polytunnels out in fields or in allotments, and these wide open spaces are often, open to getting damaged by wind because they're quite wide and open. So you end up with damaged greenhouses. Domes won't have that trouble because they're more aerodynamic. So there's one. The volume to surface area means that you basically get more living space, but you also would mean you get more growing space. So it makes it more efficient for your yield. So you can design your layout of your plants to focus the taller plants in the center of the dome, and the shorter ones, so like the vines, like tomatoes and cucumbers and things that can all grow in the center. But around the edges, you have your lower, shorter ones like your lettuces and things like that, and your herbs and things. Less surface area also means less material. So as I've already mentioned, you could just have that one material that you reproduce 60 times, and then that's knocking those out off a factory should make your greenhouses pretty cheap, because they don't need much more than just some sort of covering, polycarbonate or something on top of that, which again, if you're using the same triangle, means the polycarbonate's the same size. So you need 60 triangles of this, 60 triangles of polycarbonate, buy it in a pack, put up yourself. Be like 10.
Can you just put like an entire jacket over it, like, and staple it on?
You can do that as well, yeah. You have to like sort of pull it tight and stuff. It's not as
it's easy.
It's easy, but it's not going to be as efficient in terms of temperature and stuff, because you're not going to get it over there perfectly smoothly in all cases.
Fair enough.
So it's better to do it per triangle. But anyway, you need to ventilate a greenhouse. Don't know if you've ever done any gardening or ever been in a greenhouse, but you're supposed to ventilate it. So to make sure that the plants stay healthy, so they don't get certain viruses, is that right? So certain algae or whatever things on them. And also they need wind to move them around to keep them strong. So you're supposed to do that. So usually what people do is they rig up a fan powered by something. But because it's a boxy shape, it obviously requires more effort to put that thing around. So this is a problem that we already have. You would either need a lot less power to run your fan, because you wouldn't have to do as much work, or you might not even need a fan at all, because you might just be able to ventilate in the right space. So like if you just put open a side panel on the side of the dome, that will be enough to let the air flow in that comes in naturally, and then that will just flow out and up, maybe out the top or something. So you could probably save yourself some costs there as well. And then there's, of course, as we've already mentioned, capturing the sun's energy. So if not solar panels, then just the fact that the sun can enter from all angles means that you're capturing more heat. And some really cool designs I've seen for greenhouses also put like a water feature in the north side of the greenhouse, which so the water then acts as a thermal battery effectively, and then so it heats it up during the day, but then during the nighttime that water slowly releases its energy back into the greenhouse and keeps it from frosting, which is ultimately the whole point of the greenhouse in the first place. So basically that's it. My conclusion is, after all my research into domes, that they are amazing, and that we should probably be living in them because they're just more efficient. But failing that, with the very least, what we should definitely do 100% is have a greenhouse and put them in a garden and grow your own food in it. That's my
wholeheartedly agree. And some of those images you've shown, like for example, that one we class as maybe the Millionaire's sort of like dome pad.
Beautiful wooden interior, yeah.
It looks amazing. I would happily live in there, very happily. So
yeah, I mean, it's the first time I really imagined it as an actual house, to be honest.
Yeah, because we've talked about this before, and I've always seen them more greenhouse level, maybe twice the size. But I've never considered them like, Millennium Dome sized, or even that house sized. I've never considered them that size, but yeah, that makes complete sense how it would be that way. I think having everything in the middle as a central column makes sense. Everything outside, and the big windows, as you say, that go from bottom to top. I also noticed on those windows, only the bottom panels were see-through and the rest were semi-translucent to let a light through, but can't see in or see out easily.
Yeah.
So it's real simple design touches. Just makes it really beautiful.
Well, I mean, if you obviously it would be expensive, but you could also do stuff like those glass panels where they will go from translucent to non by running an electrical current. So, like in the winter, you could just open them all up, whatever. But in the summer, you might go, well, it's a bit bright, so I'll reduce it down a little bit, or cover some of them in solar panels, so that you're definitely getting your sun exposure from east to west. So I think that's probably what I do. I'd probably have half of them as windows, and then the rest of them as solar panels. Or indeed, we could even do the windows that are solar panels, because I
was going to say
that would be cool. Because then I wonder with that one, if the sun comes through this window here, and it's a transparent window, and it captures a bit of sun as it goes through, does it then go through the entire house and then come out this window and also catch sun coming out that way as well? Because I think it probably would.
Kind of has to, I suppose, yeah. Because actually capturing the sun doesn't actually reduce the sun.
No, it's just moving a electron or something. Something hits, so obviously it can't catch everything. It's like why its efficiency is not that good. Can't capture every single ray of sunshine that comes through. So the ones that get through, if it's transferred, could then hit another one behind it on the other side of the building, even.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I mean, that would increase. Yeah, it wouldn't increase the efficiency of that panel, but it would increase the entire building's efficiency by another 20-30%, whatever. So yeah, I don't know how to act on this one though. This one's difficult. I'm not sure I can build a house, but I will certainly look into building a greenhouse. I don't know.
I mean, well, maybe there's no act, but we could definitely think about it. This as a future sounds pretty cool. We've also covered the resource-based economy and the Venus project. The Venus project also used dome structures, kind of similar to the Eden project. So I think, as a design methodology for the future.
And the pictures of the Elon Musk's settlement on Mars.
Mars, yes.
That used domes as well.
Yeah.
So
domes are going to win.
We're aware that these domes are amazing. I don't understand why we don't use them more.
Domes are going to win.
Now that I've seen them as houses and they actually do kind of work, I'm thinking we should definitely have more of them. And not just as novelty things, as actual functional buildings. Nature gave us a clue. It's been building spheres for us all over the place. There's a reason we should pay attention.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we didn't go down that angle. I mean, stackability is the only thing I can think of. Just the fact that geodesic domes seem more complex than they are. And also we went through this phase as humankind where we believed in flat earth, etc. I know some people still do. I don't know, do they just not believe spheres exist? I have no idea. But
I don't know. Obviously, if you think about a plank of wood, you think of something oblong and square and things. But even that in itself is quite amusing, because how we get that piece of wood is we take a circular shaped log, we shave off the bark of it, and then we cut around the edges until we've got basically like an octagonal shape, so that we can then cut the boxes out. So like it starts off round and cylindrical, and we turn it into squares, and then say, it's much harder to build things that are round because the wood's square. Well, it wasn't, but you made it square. So, I mean, that would be the ultimate, is if you could figure out how to make your dome, I guess, out of cylinders in the first place, then you could probably just make them out of relatively young trees.
Yeah, imagine like putting a tree in a big like hole punch that punches out 60 triangles straight down the middle.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much. I want to own a dome now.
Cool. Well, let's build one then. If anyone out there wants to help us build one, put your answers in the comments below, and we'll get in touch. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening. Remember to think, educate, and act, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.